I'll try to point this so it sees me. Okay, so basically I'm going to talk about cycle really quick. So let me just call up my terminal emulator, make the window bigger, go to pry, and basically all that cycle does is I actually forgot. Let's do this show doc cycle, show doc array pound array pound cycle. Okay, basically given it calls the block for each element n times forever, and basically if you look at here A B C, it's going to call it for A B C A B C A B C. So if I do, for example, yes, I'm recording. Yeah. So basically, if I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, cycle, and then I go put SX, it's going there forever. So it just goes through an array over and over and over again. And it's using it, in their case, it's cycling between two things, the two styles, one for one color, one for the other color. And so no matter how many records you have, it picks one color, then the other color, then one color, and then the other color. So it's basically a way to over and over again go through a certain array, pulling values. So that's what it does. It's maybe I'm not explaining it very well, I admit. Maybe a better way to do it is if I do cycle dot. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. So the next one is style sheets. Now that's a whole story, and I'm not going to tell you the whole story because that's a separate lecture. But the short story is this. And if you managed to do the assignment at least somewhat, you would have noticed that first you saw the results of, for example, the list of books, and they were all kind of black and white. And then you put in the style sheet and they turned to color. Okay? And what's going on there is that the base, how do I do this most easily? Maybe I'll grab the book. And maximize it. So is this the right chapter? I think it is, right? Yeah. So the basic HTML that this creates looks, let's say, like this. And just without going into a lot of detail, you remember, if you know HTML a little bit, and we're going to go into it even for those who don't know it yet, these angle bracket, the stuff in purple, that's HTML. That's the text file that gets sent from the server to the client, and that's the browser uses to turn that into a picture, right? And each of these little angle bracket designs correspond to some visual element. It's a letter, it's a header, it's a line, it's a paragraph, it's a text box. Now, HTML by itself essentially draws, let's say, black and white. All the text is there's no colors, there's no backgrounds, there's no shadows, and all these things. The way you add styling to a web page, almost always, is to put a style sheet, which is called CSS, or Cascading Style Sheet, and add it or include it in the web page. The way you include it is by an extra header, which I'll show you in a second, which says, for this HTML file, this is the companion CSS file. For this HTML file, this is the companion CSS file. So now you have a CSS file that declares with a kind of an obscure notation how to color things. So you might see things that look like in CSS. In the CSS file, you might see something that says A, curly bracket, background, black. Something like that. And this says that whenever there's an anchor tag, i.e. something in HTML that looks like this, it should be colored red. So this styling tells the HTML what color to make That's why before you had the CSS file associated, you ended up with something that was black and white, and when you associated the CSS file that they gave you, it got nice style. Okay? Now, there's many more things you can do, obviously, and one of the most fundamental things which tripped me up when I was doing it, if you watch my video, tripped me up, is that one of the most fundamental things is that you can attach to any HTML tag, like div, something called a class. And this class equals field doesn't do anything except to annotate this structure from div to here as with the label field. And that doesn't do anything by itself, but it creates a label that you can then use within the CSS to say anything that's labeled, i.e. class equals field, should be green, should be brown, should be blinking, should have a shadow, should have a big margin. So, and I'll show you that in the HTML. So the reason for me it didn't work initially was that I did not put the class in. So let's with that high level summary, let's go a little further. Oh God, I remember now. This comes out like crap for some reason. But if you see here, this is now, the spacing is wrong because of the PDF, but this is now the CSS file. It's called Style Sheets Products. That is going to give color to your different pages in the depot. And it says, for example, that the top thing, dot products, curly bracket, means anything that is classed products should have these different characteristics. Vertical align is top, padding is 5, and so forth. So you associate the CSS by putting it into that assets directory. All you do is put it there and it magically starts being used. And this is all crap. Then the next thing that has to happen, so the first step is you put the CSS file in the right place, which is in that asset/style sheets directory. The second thing that has to happen is that line up there. Who can say what that line does and why it's really, really important? You all put it in if you got the thing to be colored. Can anybody take a guess? Some of you I know CSS really well. So, yeah, William, go ahead.
It specifies the class name by declaring a variable class equals to, and then runs that Ruby code, which gets the controller name.
Exactly.
Controller name.
So, and so if you look a little bit more closely, you see that it's angle bracket body, which is an HTML tag. And if we look at, I don't have it running right here, but if you looked at the output, you would see that the whole HTML page that's describing, for example, the list of books is going to start with angle bracket body. But the next part is the critical thing. It's going to put a class tag, like I was just talking about. I have only one pencil here. That one's left open, so that's no good. It's going to put a class tag. So now I'm going to have, in my HTML, I'm going to have angle bracket body. I'm going to have the whole HTML page here. It's going to end with slash body. And this magic incantation here is how the body tag gets put into the page. And the thing after class equals has got to be a class name for the whole body. So what you want to end up with is, instead of angle bracket body, you want to end up with angle bracket class equals product. Because what that says is that everything in here is under the, is considered to be part of the class body. And that is how the CSS gets associated with this thing. So you have CSS, you have an HTML file that has class product in it. You have another CSS file that goes with it that has the notation dot product. Okay? Dot product, and again, this is, I'm going to go into more detail, I'll give you the high level, says any part of this, of the HTML that has classes product should be colorized according to these rules. So until you put this line into the HTML, you're not going to see the result you want. I'm tempted to actually go build the thing in front of you guys, because I know that at this level of explanation, it's kind of hard to follow. Who was it that said they were completely confused by CSS? Was it you? Are you any less confused? Are you like down to 90% or still 100?
Early 95. Yeah.
Okay, 95. I think the best way to do is to play with it, to be honest. And so I'm going to give you guys in a subsequent lecture some very simple homework to play with it. It's, at one level it's very simple, and another level the power of the things you can do to give a web page styling is so rich that, if you start in the middle, it's kind of hard to follow. So we talked about rake, talked about style sheets, the form back end. Okay, again there, I'm going to just, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to do it. Because there, again, I want to explain it by doing it. So I'm going to see how good I am to do it on the fly. Everybody want me to do it? Okay. So what? I was going to start at the beginning and do the exercise, because that's the only way I'm going to get there. Yeah. That's the only way I'm going to get to where I want to be. I did. I can find my spot in the video. No, that's okay. I almost remember it. Because it'll give me a chance to talk through some things. So let me move this. It's a different computer. That's what you meant. It's a different computer. Okay. Okay, give me the book. I don't want this anymore. Go away. I don't want this anymore. Go away. I want the book, so I remember what I'm supposed to do. Put that over there. Yes. Oh, was that a hand? Okay. Widen this up a little bit. No, not that much. There. Widen this up a little bit. Not that much. There. Okay. So this is this way. Oh, great. Brother. Okay, try it a little bit. Is this something? No, that's not what I want. Can I tell it to be small? That's not going to help any. All right. You know what? I'm going to go like this. Just going to switch back and forth. That way they can both be big. Okay. And big. Okay. So the game starts with Rails new depot, right? So we're going to go in here, Rails new depot. And as you remember, that creates a whole bunch of files in a directory called depot. So once it's done, I'm going to go cd depot, and there are all the directories. In particular, the app directory is the one that's the most interesting. The app directory contains the asset subdirectory, controllers, helpers, and so on. What we have so far is a dummy Rails application, a whole bunch of RB files, but it's dummy. It doesn't do anything because we have not told it about controllers and views and all that, right? So the next step it wants me to do is to generate the scaffold. This is the magic. This is the thing that is inherently confusing because it's meant to be. As I said in my screencast, it's a good thing. Scaffolds are good to get started and to see scaffolded code or sort of canned code. You should try to follow along here if you dare. Also, by the way, but otherwise, if your computer's open and you're not following along, then close your computer. I'll leave it up to you. And there's that didn't work. Rails generate scaffold. First, so if I don't put a parameter on here, by the way, it gives me nice help on what kind of scaffold can be created. I won't read it to you now, but I'm going to do a scaffold for product, Rails, generate scaffold. So basically, this says that by creating a scaffold this way, okay, what I'm getting is the ability to add, delete, modify, and list things. And you get to say what the things are. You could put here Rails generate product. You could put Rails generate students. You could put Rails generate whatever. It's the model, which is actually the topic of today's lecture. You're creating a scaffold for managing one kind of data. In our example, we're going to use product. And we furthermore are going to say that the characteristics of a product we want to keep track of are the title, the description, the image URL, and the price. So, what is it again? The name, the title. What's the word again? Name. Read it to me, somebody. Yeah, just Rails scaffold product and just the data types. What? Title,
Title string,
string. That says it's a normal, okay.
image,
Text.
underscore URL.
Image URL is string again.
Yeah, price, decimal.
Price is decimal. So what I'm telling the scaffolding here is basically all you need to know in a way to create a very, very simple, what they call CRUD, C-R-U-D. Who can define CRUD? Yes.
Create, read, update, destroy.
Yes, exactly. The CRUD operations are the standard operations in a database. People use it as a shorthand. So you can create a very simple CRUD application to manage this thing called product. And all I got to say is what are the characteristics of a product? And they are title, description, image URL, and price. So if I hit enter, all kinds of stuff happens. And we'll go through it a little bit to show you. Yes?
Would we do this for every relation or?
Yes, you would. But you probably wouldn't be using scaffold because it's creating more stuff than you want, but you could.
It creates tests too.
It creates, let's go through what it creates here. Let's see here. Okay, it creates the migration. Who can, since nobody asked about migrations, one of you should be able to tell me what a migration is. How about you? Okay. How about you? Okay. All right. I'm going to say what a migration. I'm going to say briefly what a migration. Migration is a snippet of Ruby code which contains enough information to take the database from the way it looks today, what columns and rows of tables, to the way I want to look next. And as you work on an application, and every time you say I want to add a table, I have to have a column or whatever, instead of going into SQL and modifying it yourself, within Rails, there's a system called migrations that helps you control that process. And every time you make a change, you do it by creating a migration, another migration. So now we have the very first change in the database, which is simply creating it. So it created a migration. Then it created the model files. It created some unit test files. It created some routes, a route. It created a fake controller. It created a whole bunch of fake views. Why? Because the CRUD operations are index, which is list, edit, which is edit one, show, which is display without editing, new, which is create a new one, and a standard form that's used in every case. It's creating a test with the controller. It's creating a helper, which is what it sounds like, and a few more things. So it created all that stuff for you, and you know, if you have the energy and the desire, you can actually go look at it and see it. Yes?
So, and you may get to this, why is this not the way we would want to create our databases?
Okay, very good question. In general, you have that, there's two reasons, I would say.
Okay.
One is that then you never understand how it works, and when it breaks, you will be lost.
Yes.
And the other reason is that because this is trying to be general and generic, you'll find as you get a little bit more sophisticated, that it's doing things you don't really want to do, and in ways that you don't really want to do it. But it's a really good way to get, a result quickly. In fact, Rails, in the original Rails demo that was famous way back when Rails started, the creator of Rails created a blog server in 5 minutes. And that was like amazing because before that it would take 5 weeks. Okay, so now we have our migrations. We have our scaffold built, and we're going to go into Sublime Edit and take a look at what we've got. And in particular, we were about to look, as I glanced there, at the migration. So I'm going to look at the migration. And as I said, it's a regular Ruby file. It can be executed. And in it, it contains instructions for how to modify the database from the way it looks now, which in our case is non-existent, to the way I want it to look. And if later on I wanted to add a table, change the data type, anything else, you would just create additional migration files one after the other. That strange number up there is a timestamp. You don't have to worry about it, but it allows things like rolling back and rolling forward to keep track of what time you go. And it's very simple. If you look at it, it says create a table called products and have these 4 columns. Okay? Now, the classic trap, or not trap, but boo-boo that everybody commits, is they will make the migration and forget to run the migration. If you don't run the migration, it does nothing. It just sits there like a dead something. So, if you look at the instructions here, it says rake db migrate, which is one of your most commonly used commands. And, sorry? I do? Oh, yes, put in the precision 8 scale too. Right, okay, good point. So, actually, I missed that when I was doing it. Precision. Please check me. 8. That can't be right.
No, it's the hash.
Yeah.
No.
8, scale. Okay. So now we can learn from this because you wanted an arrow.
Yeah, you're supposed to have the symbol and then the little hash pointer.
I know. I wonder. I knew that. I knew I was not doing what you said, but I think it should work. So we're just finding. We'll find out. So, I'm sorry.
That should be equivalent.
Okay. Anybody want to put money on it? Okay. So basically, these 4 data types: string, text, 3, in decimal, and timestamps. They are data types, and I'll give you a whole list of them soon, that Rails defines as known data types, and there's about a dozen or maybe more. And remembering our discussion about object relational mapping, Rails then takes responsibility for worrying about how those particular data types, which are generic Rails ones, get mapped into the underlying database. Now, every database on the planet has these, so that's not hard. But you can get to some more complicated ones, and then you'll have problems. Okay? So we made the modification. Now we go to this, and we do rake db migrate. And it seems to have done it. Okay, so you can see here now it's created a table. And in fact, if you take a look at the database directory, there's now a file called schema.rb. And schema.rb always reflects the current schema of the database. And it's there for your reference. You don't modify it by hand. You don't do anything with it, but it's there so you can go look. All right? So we now have a database. I can further prove to you we have a database because there's this file here called development.sqlite3. Okay, now we're happy because I didn't do anything different. The default database system we're using is called SQLite. It's a very lightweight database. In fact, it keeps the records in a local file called development.sqlite3. Okay, and so there's nothing in it. You can't read it. I'll give you a tool later on to read it. But that says the database has been created. Great. Now, a database without data is not very interesting. But before we do that, let's go follow the script. So I'm now going to run the server. So I'm going to run Rails server. And Rails server cranks up the Rails engine, looks at all these files, and gives us an error. And the error is I'm already running a Rails server. So I'm going to kill it. This is, by the way, this is very, the temptation is to be overwhelmed by all this stuff and not take the time to look for the error message. This happens to everybody. You see an error, you immediately start fixing things instead of stop, take a breath, and look for the error message and find an address already in use. And that says to me, there's another server running because the address it's talking about is the port 3000, okay? So I'm going to kill it because I know it's here. That's not it, but that's it. And go back here. Nope, not there. There. Run it again. So remember, we get an error message, stop, take a breath, and look for the error message. So the server's running. It's listening on port 3000. So we go over to this, and we listen on port 3000. Oh, by the way, 0.0.0.0 is equivalent to localhost. Localhost is kind of platform dependent. This should always work. So if you have a problem with localhost, and I saw something you did, try this. Yes?
What if you close the terminal without closing the server and then try to do it again?
No, if it depends on if the process gets killed, and usually when you close the terminal, the process would get killed, the server would go away. Okay?
Mine doesn't always do that.
Well, that's why it depends on how you kill it, and I'm not sure about the details. By the way, Ruby and Rails, even though it's been around for many years, it still has its bugs. And so occasionally when all else fails, look at your process list, find any leftover Ruby processes and kill them. Because sometimes something will get detached and be floating in the ether and mess up your life. But generally when you close the terminal really close the terminal app, the server should go away. Okay? So I'm going to access the server, as I was saying, 00, boom. No. Yeah. Now, why am I getting this? Because I didn't put /products up there. I'm just looking at the default root, and the default root stays this until I change it. I go /products. And there we go. We've got the first server is running. Notice it's all black and white, as I was saying before. There's no styling. Okay? And if I look at the underlying HTML, I will see that there's the body tag I was talking about, and it has nothing there. Interestingly, it has style there, which is, I'll go look at why that is. But anyway, there's no, yeah, that's very strange. I'm not sure what the heck that is. But anyway, there's no CSS, there's no style sheet, it's black and white. However, it already works. I can say new product and go, the best book ever, and lorem ipsum, and I'm done. I create a product, and I've got a book. Boom. Okay. Now I'll show you some tricks that are not in the book, which to sort of maybe further drive home what's going on here. So I've got here. This is still the same tab that's running the server. I'm going to create a new tab over here, and I'm going to go over to the same directory, depot, and I'm going to now say Rails console. Remember somebody asked me about that? This is just getting me into Pry or IRB. Like the small again, okay? It's just getting me into Pry or IRB, so let's say Pry, except that all of Rails is loaded in. And so I can do some really interesting things. I can say products.all. And let me take you through this. So product is the name of the model class, which is the topic for today. All says give me all of them. And it's returning to me an array, see a bracket here, with each of the products listed. In this case, we have only one product, title, best book ever, lorem ipsum. Okay? So if I go back to my browser, and I create another one, worst book ever, lorem ipsum, $100, create product, and I go back to my terminal window, and I say product all, hard to see, but there's product ID number 1, title, best book ever, blah, 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 comma, product ID 2, worst book ever. Or, since we know how to do this, dot length, 2. Okay? So already I'm using the console to interact with the database directly through the model classes, which is product. Okay? Right. Where's the book? Here we go. So the next thing the book wants us to do is, okay, here's where it got interesting. So this, first of all, talking about scaffolding, here he replaces the whole scaffold. He decides he doesn't want the form. This is actually totally different. Oh yeah, I had this yesterday. What's the best way to do this? Is there a show source here? No. It's dumb. Huh? No, it's not here. I don't know why. But I did it yesterday. What did I do? I think I did a, let me think here. I did something very kludgy. I think I did here, right click, copy, I think. Then I went to the browser, typed this URL in. Nope, that didn't work. I think just copying this is not going to, file save of this? I wonder.
View source.
There's no view source for some reason. I didn't bother investigating why. I'm using Safari, but I don't want to change it right now. Let's do this. And now I should be able to go and, no, not go to a, yeah, go here, create another tab, and I'm going to go move from desktop _ form to my dev app, depot app view products. There it is. So I copied that form file over, and if I did that right, which is a long shot to be honest, edit. I don't know what's different, but here it is. Let me just review together what this thing actually does. Okay, so what this has done, remember now, this is HTML. Actually, it's an ERB file that's going to get turned into HTML. It's the view for a form. The form is what I was just displaying here. That thing, right? And that's the HTML that creates it. And if we walk through it, we'll see, first of all, some normal HTML, div with an ID, h2 with some text that's going to be something about an error. Over here, we're going to have div again with class field. So this, once it gets processed by ERB, this becomes HTML. Okay? Now, this is a full replacement for what the scaffold created. So already you see this question of, it's easier to just replace it than to edit it. Okay? But one of the important things is that now suddenly these divs have classes on them. Now, if you remember what I said before, and let's look at it in the live state. Now, forget the head. Look at the body. Unfortunately, I can't make this bigger. But basically, here's the form. And you see that every div line here has a class on it. As I said before, this class is non-functional. It's not doing anything to what the HTML page does. What it's doing is it's marking this particular line so that somewhere else we can say anything that's marked with class fields should be green, for example. Okay? So that's mainly what this thing did, is it added those different classes that allow us to actually put styling on this. Now, it still looks the same. I did skip the step where we made the description box bigger. I think that's this rows equals 6, so let's just do that just to drive home that point. So we are now sitting in view. Stop me, by the way, if I'm losing you or whatever, stop me and I will go over again. Here's the, oh, I see what happened here. Wow, that didn't work at all.
The only thing they changed was that row 6.
Yeah, okay, so that's junk. What I,
Just add that.
yeah, thank you. It's description here, right? Comma, rows, colon. Let me make it 20 to make it obvious that it did something. And now I go to the HTML page and I refresh it, and boom, now this thing is 20 rows long. Okay? So when I refreshed it, what it did is it sent another request to the server looked up the same view, rendered it, came up with a bigger number of rows, and did that. Okay? Now, the last thing I'll do, and then I'll take a vote as to how to continue. The last thing I'll do is I'm going to take a look at somebody asked about the form backend. Now I'm again just going to point you at it. I'm looking for my editor. So the form backend is in the controller. Okay. So we're going to talk about the controller on Tuesday. So we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but I don't mind. So we're going to find the controller, the products controller, and when I create a new when I hit that new button, it's going to end up calling this action in this controller, and you see the code. The most important line of code is this: product equals product new slash params, parenthesis product params, and that's creating a new product. Now, interestingly, you'll see that it's going to then decide how to render the resultant page, because when I create the product, what do I want to see happen? Well, let's go back to the app and go here and say, go back. When I say new product, the first thing I see is the form. Okay, so this new product command is doing that. It's displaying the form. So the back end, to give you the, whoever asked, the back end for the form lives in the controller and lives in the actions that correspond to whatever it is you did. Editing a form, deleting editing a record, deleting a record, creating a record, whatever. You can go to the controller and find it there. Okay. Now, I'm going to take a pause here and say, I can stop this demo and go to the regularly scheduled program, or I can continue this. I want to see a show of hands. Should I stop? Should I continue with this demo? Okay, I need a total of 20 hands. Try again.
What would you be doing otherwise?
Oh, you want to, oh, God.
We want choices.
You want choices, you guys. Okay, here's what I'm going to be doing instead, otherwise, which is this. I'm going to go a little bit more slowly about what a model is, talk about model view controller and stuff like that. I'm going to go back to some conceptual information.
Database migration with
I'm going to touch on that, yes. Who wants to continue the demo? Put your hand up. I need half of, okay, just a few. Who wants to go to the conceptual stuff? Good. Thank you. Thank you for playing ball. Okay. Good. So let me just go into this.
I have a quick question.
Absolutely.
If you're using Ajax, does it automatically like update the server? Like if you...
No, not define automatic. You have to, if you're using Ajax, which means that the update, the information that's coming back from the server is happening asynchronously or being sent to the server. Those are different kinds of controllers. I'll just point to you this business here, the format JSON stuff. That is saying send a response as JSON, not as HTML. And so you look around that area to look at how the JSON stuff works. Now that being said, there's a lot of things that you can get automatically if you just look around the manual. I mean, the second half of that book is not a tutorial, it's a reference manual for Rails. So you can go looking through there, you can look through the Rails guides also, how to do JSON. My advice to you, of course, Ajax. My advice to you, though, is, of course, is leave Ajax out to begin with, get it to work without it, and then add that. Okay? All right. Okay, yes, oh, no, okay. So here's what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to go back. So this was like a deep dive, sort of into the deep end of the pool. I'm going to back off a little bit and talk about some fundamental concepts. So I've talked about model view controller before. I'm going to talk about it again. This is a standard architectural pattern that you will see here and many, many other places. You'll see variations on it, but there's some fundamental principles which are really good and really pay off. Okay. Now, when we talk about in a web-based app, we talk about the model. We are talking about essentially, how do they describe it here? It's that part of the application state which you want to persist moment to moment. One way to think about it is, if my computer crashed now, and I went back and I booted it up and I went back to that same page, what would I expect to see? Right? If I, for example, was in the middle of editing one field in one form, and it crashed, and it came back, I wouldn't be surprised to find that that half-done edit was not there. But if I had finished adding a product and hit save, and the computer crashed and came back up, I would expect to see that product still there. So the model, the concept of the model at a conceptual level is that aspect of an application state which is persistent and which survives over time. Okay? And generally, if you structure your application in an MVC approach, what you want to do is make sure that the end part, the model part, contains almost no what we call business logic. And business logic, again, is one of these shorthands because it may not be a business. But business logic means the logic of the app that the user is aware of. That's different from, do I lock, do I unlock, do I secure, whatever. It's the logic that says, I added a line item to my order, and then I pressed order, and order product. That's business logic. Generally, the model does not include business logic. The model is purely managing the data, reading it, writing it, joining it together, modifying it, controlling access to it. The model is a relatively static thing. It's not something that's flying all over the place. Okay? The model, so this is a diagram that actually comes from the Microsoft site, so it's a little bit Microsoft, but the concepts are there. The model encapsulates the application state. It receives and it responds to queries and commands like delete, add, whatever. And it exposes to the rest of the application functionality that represents the application state. Now, in Rails, a model corresponds to one entity or one table. Again, that's a little bit of a lie, but in general. So, for instance, in a product that's managing classrooms and students and grades, there's going to be a classroom model, and a student model, and a grades model. Those are three models, and they generally map directly to an underlying table. Okay? If you have logic that says the way I compute the final grade from all the homeworks is by adding them and dividing by 10, that's business logic that does not live in the model. If, on the other hand, I have logic that says, any student who enrolled after 2012 must have an additional piece of identification information, just made that up, that's a validation that says, I do not want any data in the model to violate this rule. That would live in the model. So as you get a little bit further along, you'll have more profound questions about what is and what is not in the model. For now, I think a really good rule of thumb is simply that the model is the object that corresponds to the underlying table. Okay? So you have this model. The model, by the way, never talks to the outside world. The user doesn't see the model. The browser doesn't see the model. The model is a service object that is in the service of these two guys. So the controller, let me take that, is the traffic cop. The controller receives requests from the outside world, and the request might be the user clicked a link, but the request might be also something that came in over the net requesting that, if I wrote an app server that's supposed to send emails, then the request could be coming over the net to say, please send an email. But it's the traffic cop. The traffic cop that gets requests from the outside world and responds to requests from the outside world. Okay? That's the controller. Yes?
Just a question about model. Would
Yeah.
something like sales tax be in the model?
Yes. By and large, yes. But it's a good one that's on the gray area, right? Yeah, but it would be. Why do I say that? When you say sales tax, like I purchased something, there's a certain sales tax that becomes part of the purchase record. I want it to live on. The calculation of the sales tax, if you're in this state and it's 2012 and it's then use this table, that would not be in the model. Okay? But that's a good example of something that's going to take a little bit of, you can debate it either way. Okay, so the controller gets a request, and the easiest request is I click the Add Product button, and that's a request coming from the outside world. The outside world expects two things to happen. One is that a new product gets added. Two is that a form is displayed, or somewhere someone supplies the characteristics of the product that's supposed to be added. Okay, if it's a form, I might have put the product name, the product blurb, the product price, and hit the add, and then the controller gets a request that says add a product with these characteristics. If it's another kind of request to add a record, then that request, whatever form it takes, would come with those parameters. Whatever the request is, the controller's job is two things then. One of them is to implement that request by telling the model what to do. You have to add a record, you have to delete a record, or whatever. That's one. And two, if it's necessary to return as a response a view, i.e. an HTML page, then its job is to tell the view, render yourself, create me the HTML needed in order to do this. Create the HTML needed in order to do this. Okay, so again here, the view is, this, you can argue about this, but basically the view is getting data, usually from the database, in terms of a list of records, a list of whatever, and it's drawing and creating the HTML. The view does not have any data in the database. The view does not have any connection with the outside world. The view is simply asked, draw me a page of HTML based on this information. And of course, we know that it's complicated. That's why we have a view that's displayed when we're putting a list of products. We have another view that shows a shopping cart. We have another view. We have thousands of views. Each one is a screen, essentially. Yes?
In Rails, do we have this connection between view and model, like in Angular, and the view accesses data by itself, and also that it gets updates from the model?
Well, not exactly, but in a way, that's within the control of the programmer. In other words, it's considered to be bad practice to have, in general, the principle everywhere is separation of concerns or hiding information. So to the extent that you can make this file, this class, this view, not have any knowledge of that other thing, you're better off. Okay? But, for example, okay, but as far as where the view gets its data to display, if you look at the ERB files, this one, for example, okay, we see this. So this is the view code to generate a list of products, the most simplistic generated by the scaffold. And you see here the column headers; they're just text. Fine, because it knows these are the columns we want. Then here we have a loop, an each loop across all the products that exist. And for each one, it's displaying it's asking the product, give me your title, give me your description, give me your image. That's in a percent equals, so that's going to be pulled out and it's just stuck in the HTML. So query, is this thing, oh, query, that's fun. So question, is this thing referring to the database or not? Well, actually, you don't know. You don't know because duck typing says that any instance here that has an each method that generates a series of products, which in turn have a title method, will work. And we have to go look a little bit deeper to see actually whether this is actually calling the database right here or not. And I'm pretty sure it's not calling the database right here. But my point is that when you write Rails code, the stuff in percent equals is the stuff that gets data from somewhere else. And it's up to you, it's under your control as the programmer to put it in here. And so you could put a direct database query, but that's considered to be very bad form.
I see it more like something calls the view and something sets the product
Yeah.
attribute, which
Yeah.
is in this case a controller.
Right,
So the controller decides if it gets the data from
right. So
if
this,
it passes on the database connection
Yeah.
or copies over or generates the data or whatever.
exactly. And if you remember the first exercise we did out of the book, this at products, which is an instance variable referred to within the ERB, is set up by the controller. The controller actually behind the scenes, what it did is it did a query to the database, came up with a result set, and the result set is sitting here, and that's what we iterated over. Okay? All right. Go back. So that's the model view and the controller. So, okay, enough about the model at this level. Now, let's talk about database migration in general. Database migration in general addresses this problem. The problem is that you create a database on day 1 or day 10 or even month 1 that has a certain number of tables, a certain number of fields, and those change because of requirement change. We decided we have to not only keep track of price, we have to keep track of wholesale price. And not only that, we have to keep track of who the publisher is. Oh boy. So we previously created this database with 4 fields. We need 2 more fields. We have to migrate the database. Now, why is this an issue? It's not an issue when you're developing, because when you're developing, you can just erase the database and build one with more tables, with more columns. However, once you're running, once there's data in the database that matters, once I've gone through and gotten somebody to type in my first 1,000 books, and now somebody says we need to keep track of the publisher as well, I can't wipe the database out. So I have to migrate the database. And this in a real world system, in a production system, when you're running, Study Buddy, and you've got all kinds of people's stuff in there, and suddenly somebody says, you know what, in addition to the class, we should also include, the building. Well, you can't just go erase the database and add building because now you're going to destroy the data. So the term migration refers to that as a concept, okay? Now realize, so there's two issues that come up, and you'll encounter these as you build your product. The first issue, as I said, is how do you modify the database non-destructively? Okay, how do you make it add the columns without the data? That's one problem. The second problem is, what do you do with the existing records with respect to the columns you added, right? If I added the publisher, and I already have 1,000 books in there, I add a publisher column, I have to decide what goes in the publisher column. I can either decide that it says not specified, I can decide that the book is temporarily marked unavailable until it's corrected. I can make any number of decisions, but I have to think about when I add a column or make any kind of change to the database where I'm trying to preserve the life of the data that's already in the database, I have to keep in mind and make a decision as an architect what I'm going to do about that data. All right? Sometimes you just put a reasonable default like unspecified or unknown. Sometimes you write another small script that runs through those 1,000 records and that does another kind of query to come up with the publisher. You can do any number of things. So you have to first modify the database schema, then you have to deal with the existing data and decide what to do about the field that you added. And the third thing is sometimes you have to change the logic, right? If you decided that the price that a book costs is going to be not a constant, but actually 40% more than the wholesale price, Well, then not only do I have to add the wholesale price column, but I have to go into my model logic to put in that calculation. So there's three things: modify the schema, deal with old data that exists, existing data, and third, often modify the logic of the application itself. And so migration is the umbrella term for those problems. Okay? Questions? Pretty straightforward. So the DB migrate business with Rake, what they decided to do with Rails is to give you some developer tools to make that a little bit more manageable. And so instead of having, especially problematic when you have 10 developers in different places, instead of having every developer go in and make schema changes with SQL, instead you create these little Ruby programs that follow a certain pattern that when they get run, when you do Rake DB migrate, they apply changes in turn. And the beauty is that if you decide that a certain schema change was incorrect, you can actually run those things in reverse and undo those schema changes. Okay? All right. Okay, now we have a whole bunch of mechanics. Rails DB mechanics. Now I'm going from general concepts to specifics relating to Rails. Okay? So first, to recap, active record is a major layer. It's the object relational mapping layer of Rails, and it is the bit that presents the class instantiations of the models. So to go to the code, let's see. First, to go to the code, we will see that in the model directory there's a product model, and it's a very, very short file. Now, if you recall, when I was in IRB, in fact, I can just go back to it, I think. Yes, I did, for example, product.all. And I can do a lot of other product commands. See if I remember it. Select. I don't remember it exactly, but anyway, there's a million ones. Pardon? Huh?
You could probably list the methods.
Yeah, but you get 300. I just showed it to you, method. That doesn't help. But anyway, the point is that there's a series of CRUD, delete, add, search, join, goes on and on that are there. And yet, mysteriously, the model source file is very microscopic. In fact, to give you another, to drive the point home even more, let's say that my book is equal to product.find the first book. Okay, so now I have book. It's of class product. And I can say book.title equals Brandeis University, whatever. And now I can say book. And now the title's been changed. And I can say book.save. And now the change has been saved to the database. Yes?
Description change as well.
No, it didn't change. I see what's throwing you off. When I said book.class, it was showing the data type of every field. Okay? But this is a book. The capital product is the class. The class has a class method called find that is defined to return an instance of the class book. And then the instance of the class book, which we prove by doing this, allows us to do operations like modifying a value and saving it. Okay? So now, if I was able to look inside the database on disk, we have saved this. This is only, not only, but the reason I'm pointing this out is because I go back to the definition of class product and there's nothing in it. Okay? So this is one of the big jobs that the active record object relational mapping does for you. What happens is when Rails first cranks up, it's going to look at all the databases, and when you ask for a product, rather a model called product, it's going to examine the database and magically creates all these methods for you. Yes?
Are you ever going to write anything in product?
Oh yeah, lots. For example, we might say, def wholesale price.
Oh, you can do it like calculate that.
Okay, equals price. I think I have to say self.price times 0.8 maybe. Oh wait, what am I doing here? That's what I meant. Okay, so now I have to reload this, I'm pretty sure. And now I say book. Now I don't have book anymore. Oh, I still have it. If I say book dot wholesale price.
Wow, no, that has a price.
Pardon?
Book doesn't have a price.
Oh. Oh, you're right. Well, let's just see what happens. Wholesale price. I want to see if any of this works. Okay, didn't get it because I did reload. I'm not sure exactly. Let me just exit from this altogether. Maybe I have to restart the server, although I don't think so. Book equals product dot find one. Oh, okay. Syntax error. Hello. Anyway, so
If you do 0.8.
is that what it is? Probably. Yep. Do it again. Okay. Now I have book. Called book. Wholesale price. Still a mistake.
Right, 'cause it's new.
Huh?
Prices.
Oh, because it's nil. Got it. So
Set the price first.
how about if I say, right,
Unless-
unless self dot price dot nil question mark. Now this won't help because I thought I could just do reload, but apparently I have to actually stop it and start again. A equals book, product dot find one, A dot wholesale price, nil, A dot price equals 100, A dot wholesale price is dot 2S, I don't know. There. Okay? Pointed, so this is really crazy stuff that happened there, right? I mean, I was able to add a method to the book class on the fly and test it and immediately discovered that I had a syntax error and all that without restarting the server. I had to restart Pry, and even that's a little fishy. I got to find out why. But so that's the kind of stuff you put into the model. You can also put validations. Pry should never be negative. Bam! And there's error checking that happens in the application as a whole, in the controllers, for example. But there's error checking that happens in the model when you consider it part of the valid state of the model. I don't want to ever allow a negative price to be stored. I'm going to make it a validation on the model. Okay? That's not what I was doing. Okay, so that's the other thing I want to say is that when you get really advanced, you can actually get alternatives to Active Record to talk to things like MongoDB and other kinds of databases. But for now, Active Record is your friend. Naming. This is so simple and yet a source of eternal confusion. The database name is plural, lowercase. Products, students, cigarettes, whatever. The model name is capitalized, singular. Product, cigarette, student. Yes?
Because it represents an instance of that.
That's the explanation, but it's because it's opinionated software, and the guy who designed it decided that's the way he wanted it to be. So it's just one of those things. And also, by the way, there's more naming stuff that's confusing. The views call a plural. The controller are plural. You're gonna stub your toe on that more than once. So just FYI, don't be thrown off. Okay? And nobody asked the funny question of like, what if it's goose? And it'll actually do geese. Yes. There's a whole subsystem
What
with.
about moose?
We can play that game. It's got a whole list. Mongoose. Okay, correspondences. Each instance of the class, the model class, like user or goose, each instance of it corresponds to one record in the database. And when a query returns a bunch of records, like find, all records, like product.all, it's going to return what is equivalent or analogous to an array of product instances. We'll learn soon that it's not really an array, but it looks a lot like an array. Okay? And then when you receive that array, it's in memory, so you can modify it. You can modify an instance of the product class, but you have to remember to save it, otherwise it's not going to end up in the database. Okay. Attributes, the columns. I just showed this to you. Rails will automatically create the methods to access each field in the database. Okay? A quick rehash of something we talked about before, which is about servers. Which is that the classic architecture, which they call a three-tier architecture, has here's the Rails logic, which connects to, so this is called the app server, which connects to the database system, which is called the database, tier, application tier, the database tier. And often there's a separate web server, like Nginx or something like that, and that's the web tier. Okay, three-tier architecture. You can conceptually think as if this conversation is held in SQL, and this conversation is held in HTTP. Okay? Active record is the thing that converts your Rails code into SQL. But the database is over here. Now, we just use SQLite. That's a kind of a testing database which happens to actually live here. But the structure is all the same. This can be things like MySQL, Postgres, other data, Oracle, etc. And so that's the separation that exists between these two. For our purposes, the thing that's fun about SQLite is if you're writing your testing using one of these databases, you have to actually run a database server, which is a big pain in the ass. The other thing that's fun is that the whole database, as I showed you, called development.sqlite, is in one file. And that file is sitting right in your development directory, which means that, okay, I can cd to the database directory. Hello, DB. And there's development.sqlite. That file is my database that contains my 3 records. And if I delete that file, I've deleted my database. So there's an immediacy and a very convenient structure for when you're just testing. Okay? Okay. Let's talk about migrations. Oh, I refer to you to an excellent set of documents called the Rails Guides. This gives you everything and more that you want to know about migrations. But basically, you'll see that there's all kinds of possible things that go into those migration files. By and large, they're pretty straightforward to deal with. So I almost would say, like, just don't let it bother you for the moment. Just remember to do your rake DB migrate. Oh, wait. Now, interestingly, I just showed you how to do this business with scaffolds, right? We did the Rails, generate, scaffold, product, and all the data types. And that created the controller, the views, the model, all kinds of stuff. When you're doing it not for experimental purposes, you will use a command called, so let me just go here, Rails generate model, manufacturer, name, text, state, text. And that generates a lot less stuff. It does not make any assumptions about your controllers. It does not make any assumptions about your different actions. It doesn't make any views and forms. It just creates the model, which is the migration file, and the model file, and the unit test file, and a couple of things. So that's Rails generate model, which you will use more. There's also another one, which is Rails. Well, this should say generate by itself, so we can see what the options are. The other important one is Rails generate resource, which I will not show you now, but that's probably the one you'll use the most, which generates the model as well as the controller, but no views. Okay, and all these. So when we talk about scaffold generation, that's really for testing and experimenting and playing. And don't be scared to do 100 Rails news and 100 Rails generator just to play with it, because it's just files. So mess around with it, build a few. Maybe when I ask you to develop a schema in the next homework, for fun of it, go try to build a scaffold for it and see what happens, because it takes you like 2 minutes, and then delete the directory. Don't let it. It's like no big deal. Okay, so that's the scaffold. But in real work, you will more typically generate a resource or a model or a migration. Those are more typical ones. They generate more bare bones things. They generate the parts of these bits and pieces which you always need, and don't put a lot of dreck into them. Okay, let's talk about data types for a second. I mentioned that. There are all the data types. This is for Rails 4. So binary, that's a certain amount of binary. I don't know how big it is, 64 bits or something. Boolean, true, false, date, that's a date, time. Decimal is really a big integer with a specified number of decimal places. Good for money because there's no rounding problems. Float is a floating point number. Integer is an integer. I'm not sure what this is. Ignore that one. String. String is a shortish string. I don't know if it's good or if it's a character or something like that. Text is like a document. You might ask, when would I use which? You have to look at the underlying capabilities. For example, it's possible that you can do a keyword search within the body of a text field, which you couldn't do within this. You have to look at it. Generally, you're not unsafe to just use string until you discover you need to use text. Timestamp, I'm not sure that you do these two. But the point is, this is your vocabulary, yes.
Primary key is a unique reference. It's typically, it means it has to be unique, and you use it as like the ID.
Yeah, but the thing that's confusing me about that, although let's just check your theory, is that I said before, and I believe it's true, that the primary key is always built for you. So by that logic, if we look at my DB migrates, the first one, see, it doesn't actually say ID here, which it would, because the ID is happening by itself. Because if I look at the schema, you see that it does have, it doesn't even say the ID here.
Yeah, but ID doesn't have to be, you can declare anything as your
Oh, so maybe that's when you want to override that.
So like your title could be your primary.
But you don't, it could, but that's like for when you're,
But you can have multiple primary keys.
you know, yeah.
Well, you can have multiple keys, not primary
Right.
keys.
Let me put it this way. It may be possible, but don't do it. It'll hurt. Later on, when you're a little bit more advanced, you may have a reason to do it. For now, don't use this. It's going to mess up your life. But here are the data types. And so when you look at this migration, you see there are all the data types mentioned. Okay. Each data type, and you can look a little deeper now in the Rails guide, has a set of additional properties that are permitted. And probably the properties that are permitted on text are different from the properties that are permitted on string. Yes?
No, they do foreign keys.
Yes. Yeah, yes, you do, but you don't declare them special, you just use integer. You just put integer, and then there's another declaration that tells you that this is how the join's supposed to work. But as far as the definition of the database, because remember, right, if I end up with two tables, one of them is the product and the other one's the manufacturer, then inside the product there's going to be one column called, let's say, manufacturer ID. You do have to create that column, but then you have to declare that it actually is meant to be used in the join. And that's a separate declaration, which we'll get to.
Oh, I mean, like, if you define foreign key, then the database make sure that can reference only states that exist already exist.
Gotcha. That's that's an interesting question because probably not all databases have that feature, the declaration and enforcement of that validation, because that says, I can't do it, and then you have to get into deletion semantics. If I delete the thing, do I have to delete the relying one? So you're already getting into more advanced stuff, and probably you'd be doing custom code. It wouldn't just fall out like this. But you can have a foreign key without that enforcement by the database layer. You can enforce it yourself in your application layer. Okay? And we'll get to this at a subsequent lecture, but there are, with this now, just like you saw me do find one, and I said product.find parenthesis one, which is find ID number one, and you saw me do product.all, which is give me all of them. There's a whole bunch of other query style methods attached to the model class, and they'll let you do whatever you need to do in terms of access. And you learn them as you do the homeworks, and you learn them as you sort of go deeper into it. But that's another major job that Rails Active Record does for you, is provide you all those methods. Okay? Similarly, validations, I won't go into them next, but I'll go into them at the next lecture. And finally, I want to just point out two things. I put a list of all the, and I'm going to keep on updating this list. Rake tasks, remember I talked before, just a set of command line utilities for developers. And you can see here, if you're looking for one, you can look through this list and see if you can find it. I'm going to add it. Yes?
Can you put a search feature on this website?
You want to do it? Actually, you can do something kludgy. You can use Google. You can do this.
I know, but you have all the cool.
You can do site, colon, and then do this kind of game. Didn't work. But anyway, that's how you do it. Didn't work because, I don't know why it didn't work. I did it earlier. It does work. But yes, I should put it's on my feature list. Okay. Mechanics. Let me go back to this, and then I want to turn you on to an app called Mesa SQLite, which is a GUI to let you look inside the SQLite database directly, without any reference to Rails whatsoever. And that's very handy if you're if you're wondering, did that record actually make it over to the disk? This app, which is free under the right circumstances, will do it for you. Okay? All right. Let's see what else. So let's talk about next class for a few minutes. So one thing is, I'm going to change this, and I changed it at home, but I forgot to push it up to the server. Instead of doing videoing, I have a better idea, because it's a problem for everybody, and I saw the 15-minute limit on Magic Screencast or whatever it is. That's annoying. I saw some of you copying your huge files up to file servers, which must take forever, and that's annoying. So I thought instead of that, another way to get you to really interact with the homework is that everybody will be asked to make notes when you're taking the homework of things you don't understand. And your blog post after doing the homework will be a list of the things you do not understand. And then that'll be really good because we'll have a list, we can look at them and find what to talk about, and also it's going to force you to be a little bit more engaged or reflective while you're doing the homework, trying to find the things you don't. And I think that's more useful, I think, for me, and probably less of a hassle for you. Okay? And so you'll see the next homework updated accordingly. So next class, I'm going to update. This is for Tuesday. I'm going to put some stuff at the beginning here. I'm going to quickly talk about active record for querying, active record for validations, because I didn't get to them here, and we'll go from there. Okay. The homework for Tuesday is finally complete PA3. A lot of you seem to have. Do some schema exercises, and basically what that is, I'll just show you. Yes. For some of you, you'll be able to do this homework in 2 minutes, and other of you will take more time. And I want to get everybody sort of on the level playing field. But it's basically design little schemas for a bunch of little scenarios. Okay, and in text. Don't do pretty pictures or anything. Just do it like this. The key is to think about how the relations work. Okay? And then finally, it is chapter 7, where you're going to start thinking about unit testing. And I think we're just going to do chapter 8, and then we're going to be done with that book as far as the chapter by chapter reading. Okay? Yes, I will, but it's not urgent yet. I'm trying to. It's one of the difficulties or challenges with this class is to try to get things like, get things that are most urgently needed as quickly as possible, so people can get going.
I do think it would be useful once you start coding.
Oh yeah, it's really cool. Yeah, it also gives you reinforcement, right? Yeah. Right. Okay. So okay. Before you go, let's have a quick little discussion. We have 6 minutes. No, I'm sorry. I'm done. Right? Oh, we have no minutes. Okay. Forget it. The discussion was going to be. Give me some feedback. Let's have a quick 2-minute discussion. Feedback on how to improve the ability of you to grasp all these intricate technical questions, particularly in applying them. I mean, what I'm doing is demoing. I'm asking you to do homework yourself that exercises it, and I'm offering you chances to have individual one-on-ones with Amin and I, and I want to do more, especially for those of you who are lost, and be willing to admit you're lost, if you are. Okay, so what else can I do?
Like an in-class exercise after you demo it.
Okay.
Reinforce it.
Meaning,
Like,
you go do this now.
Yeah,
Okay,
but like in class, so we can ask you.
during lab, maybe next
Yeah,
lab.
during lab. Yeah.
You guys like that? That's an awesome idea. Let's not stop here. Any other awesome ideas?
Honestly, the thing about this is there really isn't that much. Like, this is mainly things we do on our own, right? I think there's some resources. If you can get, like, have you heard of the zombie thing?
Yes.
Is that a good resource to use?
It's a great
do
resource.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
Is it like give a list of those resources?
Yeah,
so
it's
people
there,
can
but we
know?
don't have search.
So,
Yeah. Some of the things are kind of hard.
It's no matter how it goes, it's always my fault. I know. I understand. I know how it goes. I have kids. Yeah. Okay, but let me just show you. Background. No.
For cheats.
It's under. Yeah, look, we can add some more. Oh, I know where it was.
So many links.
I always remember there's stuff here, but I don't know where it is.
I know. I agree with you.
Recommended rework.
Yeah, that's where it is. You're right. Yeah. Boop, boop, boop. But anyway, I will take it to heart. So Rails specific.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, you have zombie. Wow. Okay.
No, but I mean, but it's a fair point. I mean, it's like a needle in a haystack. I understand that. So okay, so more resources for those of you that want. But some of you must be totally lost. And without embarrassing yourself, don't feel embarrassed. What else do you wish we did? Just say, or speak for somebody else. So this is a really good idea. That's a really good idea. One more idea. Okay. I know this is the way it goes. It's okay. I got 2. That's pretty good. That's success, I think. Remember office hours. Both of us have office hours. Remember, we are very available, more than you want. So use it. Don't be a dope. Okay? Thank you. Bye. See you on Tuesday. That'll be the slogan of the class. Don't be a dope.
I don't think this to you. I don't think it much matters really, but have it.
Huh?
It's
Okay.
also, because I know earlier the green things that you use research.
Yeah.
I want to ask you if you do any places where you're trying to
Absolutely. Hey, so Alex is asking me about internships, and it turns out that Joe asked me, and he has an internship. So I'm not saying I can do it again, but use me as a resource. Okay? Let's talk about what you're looking for, and I'll see if I can come up with something. Not right now. Everybody's waiting.
I'll
Yeah.
send you an email.
Send an email. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And thank you.
Yeah. Absolutely. I don't have to take anybody's hand. Everybody's sick. Quickly wash your hands. Okay. Send me an email. The way I'm gonna get you to prove that you're sincere.
No, we're
And
gonna
then too, is that you have to take your V. Here's what I'm looking for. I will respond, but I won't take the lead. Okay? All right. It's distracting, man. I tell you. I'm sorry for embarrassing you. Of course it's distracting.